Years passed and Erebus 9 began to heal. The ocean grew quiet again. The black smoke that once covered the horizon was gone. The storms still came, but they no longer carried fire or fear, only rain. The people rebuilt on the same cliffs where the first defense lines had stood. The steel towers that once aimed at the sky were now green with vines. The bunkers beneath them had become schools and homes. Children ran through the fields where plasma fire had once fallen, laughing as they chased the glowing insects that came out after dusk. To them, the stories of the war sounded like distant legends, hard to imagine, impossible to forget. Dr. Emily Hart walked slowly along the ridge every morning. Her hair had turned gray, but her eyes still carried that same steady fire. She often stopped by the old relay tower, the one that had sent humanity's message to the stars. It no longer glowed, but she still felt its hum, deep under the metal. Sometimes she would sit on the worn stone steps nearby, just watching the ocean. The sea looked different now, calm, peaceful, almost forgiving. It was hard to believe this same water had once swallowed burning ships and broken dreams. One afternoon, a group of young cadets arrived from the new academy built inland. They came to learn the history of the siege, to see where it had all begun. Among them was a quiet boy named Eli Grant. He couldn't have been more than 17, but his eyes held the same curiosity Emily remembered from her own youth. He walked up to her as the others moved on, hesitant but brave enough to ask what everyone else wanted to know. "Dr. Hart," he said, "what was the message you really sent that day?" Emily looked at him for a long moment. The question had been asked many times over the years, by reporters, historians, even politicians, but this time it felt different. There was no pride in his voice, no attempt to glorify the war. Just wonder. She turned her gaze back to the ocean. The waves rolled slowly against the rocks below, soft and endless. "We didn't send a warning," she said finally. "And it wasn't a threat either." Eli frowned a little. "Then what was it?" She smiled, not the kind of smile that comes from victory but from understanding. "We sent the truth," she said quietly. "That we may be broken but we never kneel. That even when the stars forget us we don't fade quietly." The boy nodded, though he didn't fully understand yet. Maybe one day he would. They stood there together for a while, listening to the sea. The wind carried the faint hum of the tower's old circuits, still alive somewhere deep inside. Later that evening, when the sun began to set, the colony lights came on along the cliffs. New houses, new gardens, small farms built where once there had been only war. Tom Avery's old workshop was now a museum, filled with fragments of the remnant's armor, the ship that had changed everything. Children pressed their hands against the glass cases, listening as guides told them how Captain Ryan Cole had led the counterstrike that ended the invasion. But what they always asked about most wasn't the battles, it was the message. The one that had gone farther than any ship ever could. That message still floated among the stars, carried by the remnants of old transmitters and drifting satellites. It had been copied, replayed, and retranslated across countless worlds. Some called it a myth. Others called it a warning. And every species who heard it, even those who didn't believe in legends, remembered the words. "We are the last of humanity. You came to enslave us. You'll leave knowing why we should never have been forgotten." Those words had become part of galactic history, the heartbeat of a people too stubborn to vanish. Back on Erebus 9, Emily watched the sky fade into stars. Somewhere up there, the signal was still moving, its faint light stretching toward worlds that had never heard of Earth. She closed her eyes and whispered to the night, not for others to hear, but for herself. "We taught them that survival isn't luck," she said softly. "It's choice." The ocean sighed against the cliffs, the waves glowing faintly in the twilight. Children's laughter echoed in the distance. Humanity had lost much, cities, worlds, memories, but what remained was stronger than anything that had been taken. The stars above Erebus 9 shimmered brighter that night, as if listening to the echo of that message still traveling through space, slow, steady, unending. And those who once feared humanity now understood the truth. The last colony hadn't begged for mercy. They had taught the galaxy what courage looked like. The message spread faster than anyone expected. Within hours, the signal from Erebus 9 had traveled far beyond the system. It crossed relay points long forgotten, drifted through broken satellites, and slipped into the wide networks of the stars. By the time the aliens realized what had happened, it was too late. Every world under the Dominion's rule, every planet, every outpost, received the same transmission. The burning sea, the storms alive with lightning, the wrecks of alien ships falling into the water, and one human colony standing against an empire. The image of Dr. Emily Hart speaking to the galaxy played again and again. Her words echoed through translation systems the aliens couldn't block. You came to enslave us. You'll leave knowing why we should never have been forgotten. Some alien commanders ordered the message to be erased. But it was already everywhere, repeated by rebel channels, whispered in mining camps, stored in hidden networks. For the first time in years, the galaxy saw humans not as victims of history, but as something else entirely, survivors who refused to die. And the Dominion began to panic. Their fleet started to regroup, but confusion spread faster than their orders. Some of their own soldiers questioned why they were fighting a species that had already proven impossible to break. Down on Erebus 9, the people didn't have time to watch the chaos unfold. They were busy preparing for the next move. The alien fleet still orbited above them, damaged but alive. The colony's defenses were weak, power nearly gone. They knew another wave would come, and when it did they would need more than a shield. They would need a weapon. In the main shipyard, the engineers gathered around a massive structure hidden beneath the surface of the ocean. A warship built from human steel and alien wreckage. They called it the Remnant. It was larger than any ship the colony had ever built, powered by storm energy and the very core taken from the captured alien craft. For weeks, they had worked in secret, welding and forging even as lightning struck the water above them. Now it was ready. Captain Ryan Cole stood on the launch bridge, the glow of the ship's control panels lighting his face. Around him, the crew moved quickly, their voices steady but quiet. "Engines are charged," said Tom Avery, checking the readings. "Once we leave the water, there's no coming back." Ryan nodded. "Then we don't plan to." He opened the comm to the colony. "This is Cole. The Remnant is launching. Keep the grid active until we clear the surface." Emily's voice came through the speaker, calm but weighted. "You know what you're doing?" He smiled faintly. "Not really. But I'm good at pretending." The water around the ship began to churn. Steam rose as energy surged through the hull. Slowly the Remnant lifted, breaking through the waves and climbing toward the clouds. The people of Erebus 9 watched from the cliffs as it disappeared into the storm. High above, the alien fleet turned to face it. The Remnant broke through the last layer of cloud and entered orbit, lightning still dancing along its hull. From the alien command ship, hundreds of smaller vessels began to close in. Ryan sat in the pilot's chair, his hand resting on the main controls. The ship hummed under his touch, alive, ready. He opened a final transmission. His voice carried across every open frequency. "For every world you burned," he said quietly, "this is the reply." The Remnant's main cannon glowed bright white, brighter than lightning, brighter than the sun. A moment later the beam struck the alien flagship. It didn't explode right away. It simply broke apart, splitting cleanly in two, silent for a heartbeat before the light consumed it. From the planet's surface, the sky turned orange and gold, glowing like a new sunrise. The people watching thought, for one strange moment, that dawn had come early. In the command center, Emily stood by the window, her hand pressed to the glass. The ocean reflected the light of the explosion. Tom stepped beside her. "He did it," he said softly. She didn't answer right away. She was thinking of Ryan, of everyone aboard the Remnant, of the promise they had made when the war began. Finally she whispered, "He gave them our answer." Above them, the wreckage of the Dominion fleet began to fall, burning, silent, and broken. For the first time, Erebus 9's sky was clear. And across the stars, the message of the last human colony became something more than words. It became a story, a spark that refused to die. By the third week, Erebus 9 was breaking. The power grids flickered on and off, food storage units were half empty, and the endless storms had become colder. Smoke still drifted over the ocean from the wrecks of alien ships that hadn't sunk yet. But even with all that, no one talked about surrender. Not once. In the command hall, Dr. Emily Hart stood over the cracked display table. Her reflection flickered in the dying lights. The colony's readings were red almost everywhere. Low oxygen, failing shields, damaged reactors. Captain Ryan Cole leaned against the wall, arms folded, dark circles under his eyes. "We can't keep fighting like this," he said quietly. "If we don't get power soon, the grid will shut down completely." Emily looked at him. "We'll find a way. We always do." He gave a tired smile. "You sound like my mother. She used to say that when the crops failed back on Earth." She didn't answer. She just stared at the screen, at the coastline flashing warnings. Something was buried there. Something big. 2 hours later, she stood on the beach with a small recovery team. The tide was low, and the water shimmered faintly from the chemicals spilled during the battle. Half buried in the sand was a fallen alien ship, its metal surface still humming with faint energy. Emily crouched beside it, running her gloved hand along the smooth hull. "It's still alive," she murmured. "Part of the core must be intact." Her lead engineer, Tom Avery, knelt next to her. He was thin, sharp-eyed, and always looked like he hadn't slept enough. "We can pull the power cell out," he said. "But it won't last long." Emily shook her head. "I don't want just power." She looked at him, a spark of hope behind her exhaustion. "I want to talk." Tom frowned. "Talk to who?" "Anyone who's still out there." He thought for a moment, then gave a grim little smile. "We can do better than just talk." They dragged the alien core back to the old relay tower, a rusted structure standing alone on the ridge. It had been built when Earth still sent signals to its colonies, before the silence, before the fall. Now it was covered in dust, vines, and salt. But it still had a heart. For 3 days Tom and his engineers worked without rest. They stripped the alien ship down to bare metal, taking wires and processors they didn't fully understand. They melted and rebuilt them, connected them to human circuits older than most of their soldiers. Sometimes sparks shot across the room. Sometimes nothing worked at all. But they kept going. Ryan came by on the second night. "You think anyone's still listening?" he asked. Emily looked up from her screen. "If no one is, then we'll make them listen." When it finally happened, when the relay tower came to life, the entire colony gathered outside. Even the children. The hum of power returned to the air, deep and steady like a heartbeat. Tom stepped back from the control board. "She's yours, document." Emily walked to the camera. She looked tired, pale, but her eyes were steady. Behind her, the wind tugged at her hair. She pressed the record button. The small light blinked red. Her voice came out clear, carried by the tower's new pulse. "To anyone listening," she said, "we are the last of humanity." People around her went silent. Even the storm seemed to calm for a moment. "You came to enslave us," she continued, her tone quiet but strong. "You came to erase what was left of our kind. But you'll leave knowing why we should never have been forgotten." She paused, letting the words sink in. Behind her, the people of Erebus 9 stood together, soldiers, engineers, children, all watching her. "We don't ask for mercy," Emily said finally. "We send only this, a reminder that humanity still stands. However small, however broken, we endure." She pressed send. The signal shot up into the sky, rising through layers of storm and smoke until it vanished into the stars. For a long time no one moved. Then the crowd began to cheer, not loudly but with the sound of relief, of defiance. Ryan stood beside her, looking up. "Think they'll hear it?" Emily nodded slowly. "They will. Even if it takes 100 years, someone will hear it." Far above, the alien fleet still lingered in orbit. They didn't know yet what had just been sent out. But soon the whole galaxy would. On the edge of the sea, the old tower stood glowing in the dark, its light reaching higher and higher, carrying the voice of the last human colony, and the promise that humanity was not done yet. The attack began before sunrise. The sky over Erebus 9 was still dark when the alarm started. The ground shook and a deep, rolling sound echoed across the ocean, something too steady to be thunder. At first, the soldiers in the outpost thought it was another storm. But when the clouds split apart, they saw shapes falling through the sky, glowing, heavy, and silent. Then came the light. The alien ships broke through the clouds, smooth and silver like blades. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. They spread out in perfect lines, covering the horizon until no stars remained. In the command center, Captain Ryan Cole stood beside the large display table. His jaw was tight, eyes fixed on the radar. "They're coming straight for us," he said. Dr. Emily Hart was already at the console. "How many?" "Too many," Ryan replied. He reached for the comm switch. "All stations, this is command. Activate the grid." The order went out across the ocean. Beneath the waves, giant turbines came alive, pulling power from the storm. Metal platforms rose from the water, their sides glowing faint blue as they charged. The people of Erebus 9 had built them years ago, with whatever parts they could find. Old ship cores, mining coils, even melted satellite debris, all turned into a single defense network. And now it was finally awake. A young operator whispered, "Power levels are stable." Ryan gave a short nod. "Fire when ready." The first shot came from the western ridge, a railgun hidden in the cliffs. It launched a streak of blue light through the clouds. The beam hit the lead alien ship and tore it apart. For a second there was silence. Then the rest of the grid opened fire. Hundreds of bolts arced through the air, glowing trails cutting across the dark sky. Each strike lit up the storm, turning night into flashing blue daylight. Alien ships broke apart one after another, their wrecks falling into the ocean below. The colony shook with every impact. Down in the lower levels, Lieutenant Nora Lane sealed her helmet and checked her squad's gear. The lights flickered around them as she spoke quietly into her comm, "Stay close. Keep calm. Remember what we're fighting for." A young soldier beside her trembled. "Do you really think we can win this, ma'am?" Nora looked at him, her face half hidden behind her visor. "We don't have to win," she said softly. "We just have to make them regret coming here." Then she whispered the words she always said before a mission, a quiet promise more than a prayer. "For every city we lost on Earth. For everyone they took." The walls shook again as another blast hit somewhere above them. But the defense grid kept firing. The ocean itself seemed to roar back at the sky. Emily's voice came through the loudspeakers. "Eastern platforms at 80%. Keep the pressure on. Don't give them room to land." Outside, lightning danced over the waves. The alien fleet shifted, trying to counter. Their plasma fire rained down, but the colony's shields held. Every shot that hit the water sent up pillars of steam, white mist that glowed in the flashes of energy. Ryan turned to Emily. "They're adjusting their formation. They'll try to break the grid." "Then we break them first," she said. He almost smiled at that, just for a second. From the observation deck, Emily watched as one of the platforms took a direct hit. The explosion lit up the sea, but moments later, another gun came online to replace it. The people on those platforms knew what they were risking. And none of them backed down. She could hear their voices over the comms, quick reports, short goodbyes, then silence. Each one hurt, but none of them hesitated. The battle went on for hours. By the time the first light of dawn reached the horizon, half the alien ships were burning in the upper atmosphere. The rest began to retreat, drifting back into the clouds. The ocean was still glowing faintly blue. Smoke rose from the water. The grid was damaged, but it was still alive, and so were they. Emily let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Ryan leaned against the console, exhausted but smiling faintly. "They thought we'd fall in a day," he said quietly. She nodded. "They don't understand what desperation does to people like us." Outside, the sea rolled on, dark and endless. The colony had survived the first wave. And though the sky was still full of clouds for the first time in years, the people of Erebus 9 felt something close to hope. They had faced the impossible, and held their ground. The world of Erebus 9 had been quiet for a long time. No songs. No birds. Only the sound of the wind and the sea hitting the cliffs. It was a hard planet, cold, full of storms that could tear ships apart. But the people who lived there were harder. They had come from Earth long ago, carrying pieces of an old dream. The dream of survival, of starting again even when the stars forgot them. Now that silence was breaking. In the command post built deep beneath the rock, Dr. Emily Hart stood by the main screen. The glass walls trembled as thunder rolled outside. She had seen storms before, but nothing like this. The sensors were showing something impossible. Not weather, not debris, but movement. Hundreds of objects, metallic, controlled. Ships. Her hand tightened on the console. "Are we getting a signal?" Beside her, Captain Ryan Cole, head of planetary defense, checked the comms. He was tall, broad-shouldered, a man who had spent half his life keeping this colony alive through scarcity and fear. "It's coming through now," he said, voice rough from years of shouting over alarms. The room filled with static, then a cold mechanical voice spoke. "Submit peacefully. You will be protected under the Dominion." The words hung in the air, strange and slow, like something spoken by a god that didn't know mercy. Ryan gave a short, bitter laugh. "Protected. That's one word for it." Emily didn't smile. Her eyes stayed on the horizon feed, where the clouds were tearing open. Through the lightning, silver shapes were falling, massive ships gliding through the storm like sharks through dark water. The younger officers in the room whispered. Some stepped back from the screens. Others just stared, frozen. Most of them had only read about the wars that once burned through the galaxy. None had ever seen an alien ship in real life. Emily turned to them. Her voice was calm. "Lock down the outer platforms. Bring the storm grid online. If they land, they're not walking out." A communications officer swallowed hard. "Doctor, what if they're too strong? What if they have better ships?" Ryan interrupted. "Better weapons? Maybe they do." He leaned over the table, his hand flat on the metal. "But they don't have better people." Outside, the rain hit harder. The sea below the cliffs glowed faintly from the power lines hidden in its depths. The colony's defense grid, A network built out of scrap and genius, hummed to life for the first time in years. Emily watched the power readings climb. If they're listening, she said quietly, let them think we're afraid. Let them think we're small. They'll understand soon enough. The next few minutes stretched into eternity. The alien ships began to spread out, taking positions in the sky. Massive shadows passed across the ocean. Lightning flashed against metal so smooth it didn't even reflect right. Then a bright beam cut through the clouds, a targeting light. The first shot hit 2 miles offshore, shaking the entire coastline. The room's alarm screamed. Dust fell from the ceiling. Somewhere deep in the colony, children began to cry. Emily steadied herself against the railing. Status. Ryan's voice came through the smoke. Damage minimal. They're testing us. She looked at the sensors again, the alien fleet moving closer in perfect formation. She could almost feel their arrogance from here. To them this was routine. Another small world to be taken. Another forgotten human settlement to fold into their empire. But Erebus 9 was not like the others. It was a place that had learned to fight the sea, the sky, and hunger itself. A place where no one survived by chance. And now the storm itself was on their side. Emily turned toward Ryan. Her voice was low but steady. Tell the gunners to wait for my signal. Let them come a little closer. He nodded once. Copy that. Outside, the lightning grew wilder, painting the ocean in flashes of white. The alien ships descended, unaware that beneath those waves waited cannons powered by the planet's own fury. Emily took one last look at the storm. The sound of thunder almost drowned her whisper. Let them think we're scared, she said. We'll show them what survival looks like. And with that, Erebus 9 woke from its long silence. The storm roared to life, and humanity's last colony prepared to fight for its name.